Okay, some more operating procedures. We'll talk a little about HF operation, which at some point you might be able to do.
I want water.
To make an HF contact that's a little bit different but similar than you would do on a repeater or simplex. Because HF bands are not, except for the weird 60-meter one, are not channelized. You normally listen to that frequency to make sure that nobody else is using it, because there may be lulls in, particularly on single sideband, where you won't see anything until somebody actually talks. So it could be quiet for periods of time, and there may be a conversation going on. You also need to make sure that whatever frequency that is, that your license allows you to operate on that frequency. You can listen, but you can't transmit unless your license allows you on that particular band for that particular mode. If you're a technician, you can probably do CW for most of the HF bands, but you wouldn't be able to do voice. You also can, if you don't hear anything, you can ask if the frequency is in use. So if you do all that and everything's clear, then you would do a CQ, which means calling any station. Usually people will send 2 or 3 CQs followed by your call sign. It's probably preferable to do your call sign phonetically, because it's easier for people to copy it, particularly if it's noisy. And you may do it several times. You say CQ, 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 this is Whiskey 3, Romeo Delta Lima, over. Wait a little bit, do it again. If you do hear somebody calling CQ, then you can reply by using their call sign followed by your call sign, like we talked about with the repeater. Same kind of thing. Preferable to do phonetics, but it's not regulation. If you're just doing a test transmission and not using a dummy load, actually doing a test on the air, you still need to identify with your call sign. So you would give your call sign and say testing or tuning or something like that, whatever you were doing. But the FCC regulations require you, according to the letter of the law, to always give your call sign whenever you transmit. So what's the meaning of the procedural signal CQ?
Alpha.
Delta.
What should you do before calling CQ?
Charlie? Oh, well, actually, all of them, really.
All of them. Delta.
I think they're all good.
Yep.
How should you respond to a station calling CQ?
Charlie.
Yep.
Which of the following is required when making on-the-air test transmissions?
Alpha.
Yep. We mentioned CQ, which is a procedural signal. There's also things called Q signals, and I talked about QSY earlier. There's a handful of them. There's actually a lot more than this, but these are the most common ones, where They're all 3 letters, and these were all kind of developed in the early days as a shorthand. When most people were communicating via Morse code. So
Why did they use Q?
What?
Why did they use Q?
I have no idea.
Probably because it's so unique and most people don't use it, maybe?
I don't know, but whoever invented it, and I never researched that, but they decided to use Q. So there's a whole series of them. And QRM means that you're receiving interference. And the M kind of indicates that it's man-made interference, like another station.
Gotcha.
There's a
so
QR.
You would say Quebec Romeo Mike?
Right.
This first one here, QRM.
Yeah.
There's a QRN, or Quebec Romeo November, which means you're receiving noise.
Makes sense.
Okay.
And for noise.
Some of them make sense and some of them don't.
Yeah.
So would you say, would you use the phonetic letter words for these letters, or do you say QRM?
Usually you do QRM because you're probably going to do it when you're in a conversation with somebody, so you've already kind of established contact.
Because you could say receiving interference faster than you could say whatever QRM would be.
Like I said, these are mostly developed for CW, but some people use them with voice, like QSY is one that you would do. Obviously, QRS, meaning send slower, is kind of unique to CW.
Yeah.
A QSL is used in both. It means that you receive the message. And usually, and that's why we call them QSL cards. People used to send physical, like a postcard with their call sign and usually some picture and information on when the contact was made. And that's how you confirmed contacts. You'd send these QSL cards back and forth. Today, not that many people send physical cards. There's a lot of them that do electronic versions of it. There's QTH. I guess the H means my home. That's where I'm located. And QRL is like, is the frequency busy? Like we, on the previous chart, you would say, is this frequency in use? If you're doing CW, you do a QRL. So like I said, most of the Q signals are dealing with CW, but they can be used on voice. So which Q signal indicates you're receiving interference from other stations?
Alpha.
Minnesota.
Which Q signal indicates you're changing frequency?
Bravo.
Okay. We mentioned band plan earlier, and there's a volunteer sort of committee for doing these things, come up with these band plans, which are the recommended modes of operation for the different frequency bands where you can operate CW or voice or data. And a lot of times, well, actually on most of them, those are specific sub segments of the band where you can operate Usually voice is on the higher end of the band. CW and data tends to be down at the bottom, lower frequency end of the band. But these are voluntary guidelines set up for the different operating modes. And also they spell out what modes you can operate, whether you're doing phone or CW or data. I'm trying to think if there's any that limits you specifically to AM or FM. I don't think so. And they, like I said, they show these subbands, and there's charts that you can get. The ARL puts them out. Nice colored things for each band, and then they show for different licenses what you can operate, and they're different for your license level. Whereas as an amateur extra, you can pretty much operate wherever you want on any of the bands. As a technician, you're very restricted.
So we want to move up from here.
You want to be a general. You don't have to be an extra. That just gives you a little more, a few areas that generals can't operate in, but it's not that big a deal. It's more bragging rights than anything. So what is a band plan beyond the privileges established by the FCC?
Alpha.
So the FCC establishes the beginning and ending frequency for the band. What goes on in the band is the band plan.
Alpha or delta? Alpha, I think it's alpha.
Yeah, that's what we said. That's all.
Yeah.
One of the basic things, according to the FCC, is for amateur radio, is supposed to be courteous operation. If there's interference, you should try to negotiate, figure out who needs to move. Try to make it a win-win situation. That's not always the case, but that's how it's supposed to be. There are some people that seem to think they own a particular frequency.
Yeah.
Which of the following applies when two stations transmitting on the same frequency interfere with each other?
Alpha.
Hello, Charlie.
Okay, there's also public service and emergency communications things you need to be aware of. There's one called ARES, stands for the Amateur Radio Emergency Service. So it's just licensed amateur operators who register to do ARES, which means that you're going to be volunteering to do duty during an emergency using your equipment. The only real requirement is that you're licensed and you register with that organization. There's also RACES, or the Radio Amateur Civil Emergency Service. It's a little bit different. It was created as part of the FCC Part 97, which is the title for the FCC regulations that amateur radio is under, because it's connected with civil defense. So you not only have to be a registered amateur to sign up for this, you have to sign up with a civil defense organization, and actually you have to do some training and kind of pass some tests in order to become a member of that. But in both cases, they're for doing emergency service in the case of emergencies, like hurricanes and power grid goes down and that's kind of stuff. So the main difference to remember is that RACES requires you to be a registered and certified with a civil defense organization, where ARES is strictly amateur radio. It says your ARES was started back in 1935. And there's one of the clubs that actually supports both.
Are these very active?
Yeah. There's some around here. They kind of take over the SARnet in the case of an emergency because it's statewide. So what is ARES?
Alpha.
That was a hard one. What is RACES?
Ooh, I think it's Delta. I think it's Delta.
I like Charlie.
I like that one too.
Let's see.
Charlie. Oh, all right, teaching Gator.
My name's Kathy, but I don't know how to change it, so it's staying up there.
So what is RACES?
Delta.
Yeah, Delta.
Sometimes they will set in case of emergency communications, but also we have just regular nets that a lot of clubs do. Kind of works the same way. You will have a net control station with a net control operator that organizes the network. So they will call the net to order and basically manage the communications between people that checked into the network. Kind of like, you know, the Indians in the teepee passing the peace pipe around to talk.
Peace pipe around, yeah.
Same kind of thing. I mean, you don't just randomly talk. You have to, you know, check with the net control operator, and you know it gets back with you. So
Get the talking stick.
Manages
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Or feather.
Also does the check-ins, because normally you start and there's a period where, you know, you allow people to check into the network, and they give their call sign, where they're located, what their handle or name is, whether they have any traffic. And then after everybody gets checked in, and normally that's all done phonetically to make sure that it gets logged properly. Then the net control operator will go back to anybody that said they had traffic, which means you've got some information you want to pass on. So whether that's a normal club type net, which, you know, we have 2 or 3 here every week, or an emergency type net, it works the same way.
Mm-hmm.
So which of the following are typical duties of a net control station?
Charlie.
Charlie.
Yeah, because Bravo, they don't check that you're licensed. It's assumed when you check in with a call sign that it's a legitimate call sign.
Mm-hmm.
Now you can, as a technician, you can listen to any of these nets, and typically they're on a repeater, so you could actually join in. If it's an HF net, which there aren't that many of, then you'd only be able to listen. So which of the following is standard practice when you participate in a net?
Charlie.
Charlie.
Charlie sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of brings up the point. In the case of an actual emergency,
Mm-hmm.
Anybody is allowed to use any frequency or any means at their disposal if there's danger to life or property.
Gotcha.
So that's a big exception that we'll talk about when we get into the rules and regulations. Like I said, traffic just means that you've got information that you want to pass on. And when they talk about handling traffic, it's just passing the messages on.
Mm-hmm.
You don't really hear that or the good traffic handling that much. Sometimes messages, when they get passed on multiple times, kind of like the old
Operator.
It goes around, and by the time it gets back to you, it's something totally different.
Mm-hmm.
They tend to use the phonetic alphabet, at least for checking in. You know,
Mm-hmm.
the nets around here, we check in with the phonetic alphabet, but we don't use it during conversation. Unless somebody's having trouble and they ask you to repeat something. There is the NATO phonetic alphabet, which is
The same as the military. I don't see any differences.
Let's see.
Except the spelling of alpha. That's the only difference I see.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's the same thing as the military uses tropical there.
I thought the military was Baker, Alpha Baker. Maybe not.
No, it's Bravo. But I was in Bravo company, that's why I know.
Okay. But you should get familiar with the phonetic alphabet. And a lot of times, I mean, they don't necessarily require that you use the NATO one, just one where you can understand what the letter is that they're trying to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if they don't know alpha and they say apple, you understand it.
Right. A lot of people will make them up.
Probably got some good ones out there.
What does the term traffic refer to in a net operation?
Alpha.
Which of the following is a characteristic of good traffic handling?
Alpha.
Alpha.
Bravo. Yeah, right.
Like Charlie, right?
Yep.
What technique is used to ensure that voice messages containing unusual words are received correctly?
It's not
Charlie.
speak loudly. Oh, sorry.
No, yeah, right.
You can't
Sure, Charlie.
speak another language. Oh, yell at him. Yeah, Charlie.
Yeah, that works for people that are hard of hearing, but it doesn't work here. there's a definition for a formal traffic message. This pretty much applies to like a packet, like in packet radio, where there's a preamble which has tracking information, which means it has like the address of the sender and the recipient. Usually, well, I'd say almost all cases, there's some sort of a check. Could be as simple as a checksum that lets the receiving station know that there was an error in the message. The transmitting station will do something like a checksum where it just adds up all of the bits in the message and comes up with a number. And then the receiver does the same thing. And if the number matches, okay. If it doesn't match, then it says there's a problem. In some cases, like in packet radio, they'll do a automatic repeat request, which sends the ARQ back and says, resend the message. Like I said, the address is part of the header, which there's a preamble and a header. I guess that tracking information is kind of hard to define, but one of the things that will be in there is a sequence number, because if you have a long message, it may take more than one data packet. So you need to know the sequence of those in case they get received out of order. And then there's, of course, the text, which is actually the message itself. And then that signature, which is usually part of the header. These are not the kind of messages that you pass around in a normal net. I don't know, never been in a emergency net of whether they require this kind of formal message or not.
It reminds me of the old telegrams.
Yeah. So what information is contained in the preamble of a formal traffic message?
Delta.
What is meant by check in a radiogram header?
Number of words.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. The main thing to remember that the FCC rules, the Part 97 stuff that we'll talk about in a week or two, always apply, but there are exceptions. And like I mentioned, in emergency, immediate safety of human life or property allows you to disregard the rules. But you better be sure it's a real emergency. So when do FCC rules not apply?
Delta.
Right. They kind of contradict that, but
they
always apply except in an emergency.
Right.
Are amateur station control operators ever permitted to operate outside the frequency privileges of their license class?
Delta.
Delta. Okay, so we talked about how you make an HF contact, which is a little bit different than you would do a VHF or UHF FM contact with a repeater. How you respond to a CQ, how you're supposed to do on-the-air testing, We talked about the Q signals, and I don't know why they start with a Q. The band plan, which is a voluntary guideline for what happens within an FCC specified frequency band. And how you're supposed to operate when you have two stations on the same frequency. We talked about ARES and RACES. The difference being RACES is part of the civil defense agencies, and you have to be enrolled in a civil defense organization. We talked about nets and the net control operator, which is basically the net control station is the equipment that the net control operator is using. And what the net control operator does basically manages the network using phonetic alphabet when necessary. What a formal traffic message is, like for a radiogram, that FCC rules always apply except for the exception.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll find out when we do rules and regulations, there's a lot of exceptions to various things, which just makes it more complicated. And that in the case of emergency situations, you can operate outside of your privileges. You can operate without even being licensed. It essentially allows you to do whatever is necessary. And we got done by noon. How about that?
Cool. That's awesome.